I will share my screen with you. So I'll just go into...
All right.
I'm just going to share my screen very quickly. Share screen.
Yeah, here it is. I can
see it. Excellent. Thank you so much. That was very helpful. I might have to pop in and out of the full screen mode just to see if we've got anyone else that's joining us, okay? Because I think that was a problem in the last one. Let me see. I think I'll probably just share it with you like this, if that's okay. Is that big enough for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, super. I'll see if I can make it just slightly bigger here. There we go. Okay, so...
Actually, I can do it by myself. I can do it by myself, Zoom.
Oh, can you? Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realise that. You know more about Zoom than me.
Okay.
So the aims of this session, we're going to talk about the importance of pure sounds, which you'll learn about in a moment. And then we're going to learn the difference between phonics and phonological awareness. And I'll tell you why it's important that we sort of know the difference there. And then I'm just going to teach you how you can support reading and writing at home. And obviously you've told me today that you've got a little one that will be coming into FS1 very soon. So lots of this will be supportive for your child. And then so that you can understand what to expect at the end of FS1 and FS2. I had a parent on yesterday who was from year 1, and lots of this is relevant for sort of year 1, or if there's any children across the school who are just learning phonics, who are maybe new to English. So again, with children right from the beginning of when they're starting to pick up and read, sort of print in the environment and things, these are the kind of things that you would expect to see right from the very earliest of years through to them starting to sort of name letters and read actual letters and short words. So these, depending on where you look, you might find this in a bit of a different order. It's not, you know, in a perfectly prescribed order, but these are some of the things that you could expect from a young age. So probably your youngest child right now is showing an interest in books and starting to maybe look at and point to or talk about print in the environment. You'll also notice around about that age that maybe if you drive past McDonald's or certain shops, or if you see things in the environment, even like this frozen sign down here, that probably your child is pointing these out. And sometimes we can think, oh my goodness, you know, they're 3 years old and they're reading the word choithrams. And it's really about them recognising the shape of these words, the colours and things associated with these symbols and signs as well. So that's a really good skill for children to develop early on. And then they would start to sort of look at letters, particularly if there are letters which are important to them. So letters that might be in their own name, for example. They would also be starting to distinguish between letters and other sort of print in the environment. It might even be, you know, symbols that are out and about, or even in this country, you might see Arabic letters, and they might be starting to understand that one thing sort of is writing in one language and that other letters are assigned to a different language, or it might be that they're starting to recognise that numbers are different from letters, even though it's still a printed symbol at the end of the day. And then they might start to notice that there's a difference between letters and words, and the spaces between words that they see in books as well, and they might start to point these out. They, again, just going back to looking at letters of significance, so they might start to think about the letters that are even in your own name or their brothers or sisters' names, because they're also important to them. And then they might start to recognise their own name and some other sort of simple words. I know that when I taught in FS1, they would recognise their friends' names sort of towards December time. So at that point, we would then think that they would begin to recognise lots of different letters and be able to name those letters, or it might be knowing some of the sounds for those letters as well. And that sort of brings me to my next point here. I'm just going to see if I can get up the I've got some chat group and things at the side just in case anyone else is coming in. Can I just check, can you still see my full PowerPoint?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, there's not anything else in the way, no?
Yeah, I know everything. I mean,
Okay.
I was just, it was funny, like going through McDonald's. It's McDonald's. Okay, let's go to McDonald's.
Yeah, and you wonder, how do they know that it's McDonald's?
I'm not very fan in eating McDonald's. Because it's not very healthy. It's junk food, especially
Yeah,
for
definitely.
kids. You know, Sophia tried French fries at the age of 4 only here in Dubai during the birthday party, and at year 4 she tried French fries from McDonald's.
Good for you, managing to keep it out of her diet until then.
Yeah.
So just sort of moving on, so we have what you might hear teachers talking about, so phonics. We've also got phonemic awareness and phonological awareness. It's not really important that you understand what the differences are here, but it's important that you understand why we teach each of these things. So I'll just go through one at a time. So we've got phonics, which you'll have heard teachers talking about a lot. And really what we mean by that is about the, sorry, I'm just going to close something down here. What we mean by that is the sounds and the visuals that are attached to sounds. So for example, sorry, having a bit of problems with the computer. So for example, you might know that this sound, if you can see my drawing on the screen, yeah, super. So that is the grapheme. I'm just going to admit another parent in here. So this would be the grapheme for that sound. And the phoneme that would go with that grapheme, so graphics, if you think of the word graphics, that's like what it looks like. And the phoneme would be the sound that goes with it. So it would be the sounds, okay? So when they're talking about graphemes and phonemes, that's what it means. So phonics is really the link between what those letters look like and what sounds those letters would make when we were reading them. So phonemic awareness is being able to hear the smallest units of sound. So being able to determine that the word fish, for example, begins with the single unit sound, and it's been able to break into those tiny units of sound and children being able to hear them. So that's what phonemic awareness is. And then if we go on to, I'm just going to stop drawing if I can here. If we go on to phonological awareness. So phonological awareness, I'll let you have a very quick read of this. And while you're doing that, I'll just delete this F off of the page. So phonological awareness does include phonics, but it's also about looking at different types of sounds that we use in language. So we do a lot of this type of work in FS1, where we follow a program called Letters and Sounds, Phase 1. And within that program, we look at instrumental sounds to start to tune them into different sounds and discriminate between different sounds. And then we look at lots of sort of wordplay. We look at rhyming activities, encouraging children to hear the same rhymes. All of these skills will support children with reading and writing later on. So, for example, if they come across, say they came across this word at the bottom here, which isn't a word. So it's saying that we can transpose sounds. So red table, if we swap the initial sounds, becomes Ted Rabel. If they came across this Rabel word, in their reading, which they wouldn't because it's not a real word, they might be able to think, right, well, what word does that look like, or what does it rhyme with? How can I use my knowledge of the word table to help me to read this new word that I've never come across? So all of these kind of things really help. We also do a lot of work on syllables. So if you think about even the word alphabet, which might be quite tricky for a child to spell, if we break that down into syllables, alphabet, the child can easily spell those parts of the words, assuming that they know that the PH would make a sound, which they would learn in year 1. So all of these things help the children later on when it comes to reading and writing. And we need to make sure that all of this is developing right from FS1, from the earliest time. We continue to work on this in FS2, and we also do some work on this in year 1. It's really important that we have rhyming games and stories and things throughout the week. You can also support with sort of basic alliteration games by doing things at home like playing I Spy. So I Spy with my little eye, something beginning with t, and then the child would have to guess things that began with the sound t. So all of these games and things will help. And then the next thing that I want to talk about is just pure sounds. I have a video here if you would like to watch it at any point at your own leisure, which teaches you about all of the pure sounds, which is really important that if you're doing any sound work or homework like that with the children, that you're saying the correct sound. So as we become adults, and often children as they become older, what we tend to do is add a sort of mistaken vowel sound to the end of consonant sounds. So instead of an adult saying that the sound was you know, for the letter M, they might say that it's M, which is not quite right. Instead of them saying...
Excuse me, Miss Phinn, can I interrupt you?
Yes, of course.
Can I just say, you know why these mistakes goes from alphabets? You know, when you say A, B, C, D, I think it goes from the alphabet, because I'm not the English speaker, I'm not the native, but when you learn alphabet from the first time, you memorize the letters like this, B, C, D.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and it's important that we learn that as well, yeah. But I think you're right, sometimes, you know, if you even think about B, it sounds like there's a, you know, a vowel sound on the end. So when we're talking about pure sounds and talking about phonics, it's important that we don't include that vowel sound at the end. So if you were looking at the letter T and we were thinking about the sound of that letter, it would be T. But some adults even will say T, it's the letter T, which is not, it's T. Okay, so if we have a look at the word flag, if I was to sound this out with vowel sounds on the end of some of these letters, so if I was to incorrectly say F, L, A, G, it would make it really difficult for the child to blend that word because they're trying to include all of the vowel sounds that don't actually exist. So they might sound it out like Phil ag, which is not correct. Whereas if we say pure sounds, ag, it allows them to blend those together to make the word flag. So basically what we want to do, particularly in the foundation stage and in year 1, is we really want to develop something called automaticity. And everything that we're doing with the children is about developing that automatic ability to be able to read and recognise sounds. When you think about a child's working memory, or even our own working memories, when we're working on something and we've got too many things to think about, it means that you sort of lose room for comprehension and for understanding what you're doing. And it's the same with reading. So if children are reading words, and they're constantly having to remember, you know, what sound goes with that letter, how do I blend them together? If they're constantly having to do this, they're not going to understand what they're reading in the text. So the quicker they become at recognising and doing these things, it allows them to focus more on the phrasing of their reading, the way that they read things, and the understanding of their reading as well. So we want them to know all of the letter sounds really, really. We want them to overlearn them, to know them inside out, back to front. Even if you had plastic letters that were upside down, could the child find that very quickly? Eventually, we would want them to know that with their capital letters as well. And also knowing what the names of the letters are, so A, B, C, but also knowing their sounds. And we would focus more so on the sounds in FS1 and FS2, but we would also want them to have the name knowledge as well. And also not forgetting about the Reggie Red words. So you'll have seen these on the Padlets and coming home for homework. It's really important that they have instant recall of these words and knowing exactly what they say very quickly. So some games that you can do at home are even hiding these words on post-its around the house or little bits of paper, even just in the one room. And then to scaffold that, you could show your child the word. So you might show them the word the and say to them, you know, what letters do you see in the word the? Can we sound it out? No, we can't, because it's a tricky word. We cannot sound it out. Go and see if you can find the word the. We've got it somewhere around the room. So you can do games like that at home. When you know your child is confident with reading that, you might not show the word first. You might just ask them to go and find it. But don't do that unless you have a good idea that they know what the word is already. But we want it to be overlearned. And it's the same with your alphabet letters. You can hide them on little pieces of paper, or if you've got plastic letters and things at home, hide them and get them to go on a hunt, or hide them in the sand, or even in jelly if you're brave enough, or any of these messy playthings, and try and get them to find the letters. Watch that you're not trying to test them too much. So if they don't know the letter quickly, show them what it looks like so that then they can match and find it that way. There are lots of songs that you can look at on the internet. I'm going to show you some of these now. So I'll stop sharing this page and I'm just going to share my internet page with you. And I'm just going to point out some of the differences with some of these songs. So this one is the alphabet song. Can you hear the sound on it?
No.
Is the sound not coming up? No.
No, I don't hear the sound.
Let me just see if I can. It's not letting me do it. I don't want to take up your time here. But basically, if I kind of skip through this video, you can see that, let me just find, that it's showing uppercase letters, it's showing lowercase letters, it's giving the children examples. So F says, so it's giving you the name of the letter, F. It's giving you the sound associated with that letter. I'm just going to admit another parent. And it's giving you some words that begin with that sound as well. So it's giving you lots of information here. It's also showing you uppercase and it's also showing you the lowercase. If I look at this song, in fact, let's stick with the alphabet for now. If I go through here, excuse me, sorry, you can see that we've got uppercase letters, but if I skip through this video, you'll see that there are no lowercase, sorry, it's showing an advert now, I'll just stop that. You can see that there are no lowercase letters to be seen in that video, so that's not giving you all the information about those letters. But again, that's okay, as long as that's not the only thing that you show. And then in this song, we've got uppercase, and it goes through the names of the letters. We've got lowercase, if I just take this advert off, got lowercase letters as well, which is great. But in this song, because it's just the alphabet song, it doesn't actually tell you what the sounds are. It just tells you the letter name. So the man would be singing Y right now. He wouldn't be saying Y. So it's just making you aware of the differences of these. This one is not telling you the letter name. It's only telling you the letter sound. And it's giving you a song and actions to go with all of the letter sounds. And then this one, if we just skip through, is giving you lowercase, and it's also giving you an example of a word that begins with that sound. So all of these songs are doing something slightly different. So the advice that I would give you there is, if you're sharing alphabet songs and things with your child, make sure that you show lots of examples of different songs. So I'll leave these links on here if you ever want to come back and reference this video at some point. You can go on and look at the different songs. But even when you're Googling songs, there's just so many different varieties, and they've all got their worth in different ways. So it's good that they get lots of experiences. I'm now going to talk about blending and segmenting, which if you're in FS or Year 1, you'll definitely have heard about. So blending is when we push sounds together so that we can work out what they say when we're reading them. So if you had, again, the word flag, and the child didn't know what this word said because they're not fluent in these sounds yet, they would have to blend the sounds together to be able to read that. So they would have to then blend flag, flag, flag. So that's putting the sounds together to be able to read. So that's what blending is. Segmenting is doing the opposite. It's where I might say to a child, if they said to me that they were drawing a picture of a flag and they wanted to write the word flag, then I would be saying to them that they need to segment. I wouldn't use that word, but I would say, well, what sounds can you hear in the word flag? And they might say to me, so we would write that down, and then they might say, I would encourage them by blending it and saying flag, and they might then catch that we've got an O and an A and a G. So it's segmenting's about hearing the spoken word and breaking it up to be able to spell it and sort of write it down. Some words that you can play to encourage this at home. I'll just delete this box, sorry, because we've not on full screen. Some games that you can do to encourage this at home are, you can change the I Spy game into words, so not just beginning sounds. So you can say, I spy with my little eye something that sounds like N. And you'll notice that the first time I said that, I didn't say a pure sound, so I corrected myself. So and there's also different ways that you can blend those sounds, which I'll just talk about in a moment. And then we also play something called Metal Mike, who's a robot in FS1, and he can only speak in sounds. We have Fred the Frog in FS2 and in Year 1, who again can only speak in sounds. So you might say Fred or Mike needs you to find a k, up, k, up. And the closer that you say them together, the easier it is for the child to get the blend. You can also blend the initial two sounds and leave the last one staggered, like this. Ka, p, ka, p. Or you can blend, right? Yeah. Or you can blend the last two sounds there and stagger the first sound. So you can try that with your child if they're struggling. So you might try k, up, k, up, k, up. And obviously, the more space you're leaving between those sounds, the more difficult it is, the more you're squashing them together, the easier it is for your child. So I would start easy and then make it harder once your child is building that confidence. You might also just play games where you get them to go and find things. So can you find me a sock? And they've got to go and find a sock. So these are lots of oral games that you can play with them at home to prepare them for this. And then we do something called CVC words in school. CVC just stands for consonant, vowel, consonant. So you'll see that all of these words follow that pattern: consonant, vowel, consonant. And when you're practicing sort of random words with your own child, it's good to think about getting a variation of consonants. So you'll see that I've got all of them here. I've got A, E, I, O, U. So I've got all the different ones. Some children find some consonants trickier to hear than others. Particularly in Scotland, where I come from, the way that our dialect is, the accent that we have, the and the sound very similar. So children in central Scotland find those consonant blends more difficult, whereas different accents around the world, children might find different things trickier. So think about giving them a range of vowels to practice, and think about, if you're just having a practice, using lots of different consonants. So in these words here, I think I've only used maybe p twice, but other than that, I've tried to use different sounds so that they're getting the experience of all the different sounds in the alphabet. And then if you're doing any of this with written, printed text, be very careful about the font that is being used, because you'll notice that in the word jam here, the A in the middle is not the type of A that we would introduce to children in school. So we would introduce this sort of A that you see up here that's just round with the line on the side. This looks completely different. And it might be that the child actually knows A and they're able to blend this word, but because I've thrown in a curveball with this, you know, different looking A, that they're not able to do it. So just think about fonts and things as well. But you can do this if you've got letters at home. You might want to get children to make some different words. So it might be that you're practicing segmenting. So you might say, we're going to practice spelling the word hot. If your child finds it so difficult and can't do it, you would model how to do it. So you would do it first. You would bring down a hot, hot, and you would blend them together. Or you can practice reading some words and making them. But again, just watch that you're not assessing your child if they don't know how to do something yet. So Just if they don't know how to do it, model it, and model it some more, okay? Another great website is this website called Busy Things, where you can click on, if you just Google Busy Things, it'll take you to this website, and this is the username for our parents and for our, it's the password as well for parents in our school to be able to access this. And there are lots and lots of excellent games. Even if you've got children further up the school, you might want to have a look at this. There are games for all the subjects, actually, maths and everything as well. But there are some great phonics games on here, so you can go in and explore that website. And it's very, very useful. We use that a lot in school. So I'm just going to move on to writing now. So again, if you've got any really young children, the writing that you would see sort of earliest on is them starting to have a go. They might even be using a whole hand grasp, and that's fine when they're just having a go at the beginning, where they're starting to sort of scribble and make marks and lines and just experimenting with that mark making. You probably will then see controlled lines coming in. So you might see sort of this picture up in the corner where this is actually quite advanced. You wouldn't see that straight away, where they might be starting to draw circles, maybe to represent someone's face, and drawing some dots for the eyes and things, and a happy face, where they actually are showing some kind of control over the marks in the drawings that they're making. You would then also want to encourage your child to draw not only clockwise circles, but also anti-clockwise. If you think about the letters of the alphabet, so let me see if I can just draw some for you. If you think about the letter A, we go anti-clockwise and then down. If you think about the letter D, anti-clockwise and down, or G, anti-clockwise.
Yes, that's
so
a problem.
Yeah, so if that's a problem, what you can do is, even when your child is in the bath, or, you know, any activity that you can get, even if it's messy play, they might be, you know, moving their hands in the messy play. Can you move it in the opposite direction? So can you go the other way without actually having to say to them it's clockwise or anti-clockwise? Even if they're drawing with bubbles on the bath, the side of the bath, can you draw a big circle? Can you draw it the other way? And you do it with them and really have fun about doing that. Even doing it with the chalks outside, and the messy play and things as well, and the sand, drawing on the sand with a stick. Try and encourage them to do it the other way. You can even make up dances. So we do some dances in the school where we make circles this way, and then let's see if we can move our hands in the other way. And all of that gross motor action will then come into their fine motor control as well. And you see that the parent here, you might want to be just having a sort of an overwrite with your child, just to let them experience what that feels like to make that movement. But I wouldn't do too much of this, because you don't want to take away their confidence or independence. And then you might see children start to write squiggles, which might go from left to right or right to left if they've been witnessing parents writing in Arabic. And they might start to leave spaces between those squiggles. And then you'll see this type of thing where children start to make marks that start to look like letters and numbers, and they're really developing much more control there. And it's at that point that you would start to teach them the correct letter formation and start to encourage that. You wouldn't insist on it every time, you would just be sort of encouraging it with them. And then that's when you would want them to be learning about assigning letters of the alphabet to the phonics that they've learned, and been able to use that to represent words. When we teach the sounds in school, these are all the sounds that we teach in FS2 within Set 1. We actually teach these in FS1 as well, but it's quite informal. But in FS2, it becomes quite formalised in that phonics lesson every day, and you'll have seen lots of examples of that through the children's phonics lessons over the last few weeks. We would teach these sounds, but if you're doing any of these games where you're making, you know, 3-letter words, the constant vowel constant words with your child, I would start doing that with single letters first. And then if your child is starting to get very confident with that, I would include some of your digraphs. Digraphs are sounds, phonemes, which are made up of 2 alphabet letters, like sh, ch. So you can start to add those in, but only add those in if your child is confident with the single letters. Also, I wouldn't move on to words like flag, which would be a CCVC word, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant. Don't move on to 4 letters until your child is confident with 3, because it then makes it quite difficult again. Okay, so the whole time you're just trying to develop a love of reading and writing, and to make sure they're really, really confident with it. Thinking about writing as well, when your child, before they write something, and this is true of adults as well, you first need to be able to think it, then you need to be able to say it out loud before you can write it down. And even children at a young age, even if they've said it, you'll notice that when it comes to writing it, they've forgotten what it was that they actually said in the first place. So we do something in school called hold a sentence. So we would say to the children, I want you to hold a sentence and you're going to tell me the sentence back. So it might be, the big dog is wet. So, and I know that the big dog is wet contains lots of CVC words and some Reggie Red words. So that being a tricky word that I want them to be able to spell early. So I would say that to the child lots of times. And every time I said it, I want them to say it after me. So I would say, the big dog is wet. And then they would say it. And then I might say it in a silly voice, the big dog is wet. And they would say it in a silly voice. And we would do that in lots of different ways, whispering it, shouting it. And what I'm trying to do is get it to stick in their head. Some children at a young age, you would only do that with 3 words at a time. Even go and test your young children after this and get them to repeat, 5 words or something back to you. They might find it really, really challenging. So try just with 3 words at the beginning. It might even be the big dog. And then you would build it up with more words once your child was confident with that. Even when it comes to the writing, they might then forget what they've said. So you would get them to go back to the beginning of the sentence and read what they'd already written, because that then might prompt them to what the next word is. Okay, and in all of this, particularly in FS, not when they're beginning writing in FS1, but when they are, as soon as they are making controlled marks, we need to really encourage the correct letter formation, because otherwise, if they get into bad habits, we cannot get them out of those habits later on in the primary school. They must have the correct formation to enable them to write at speed later on and to join their writing later on. So it's very important that they get the formation right. So you'll see on the Padlets that we've got these sort of PDFs of how to write the letters. If you're unsure from the description, please just contact the teacher. So for example, we would go around the apple and down the leaf, down the laces to the heel, and around the toe. So these sayings, we get them the children to say them over and over and over again as they're writing them, and you can say it in silly voices and things. You might want to cut out some of the words here, because as I've just told you, it's really difficult for young children to repeat. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 words, which is a lot. So we then cut it down and say laces, boot. Anything that helps them to remember that formation. So you can cut down the words there. I've just left all of the formation. Sorry, the background's coming up because I've not got it on full screen.
Very useful formation.
And they're on the Padlet as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And even further up the school, that's the formation that we would use. I'm just going to check. There are some letters that are funny, like kicking K, for example. You'll notice that when it comes to primary school, and when we start doing Nelson handwriting, this is not the K that we would do, the kicking K. We would do this form, but children that are in FS1 would find this too difficult to do. So in the primary school, we would do, sorry about the messiness of this, we would do that form. And for F in the primary school, again, sorry, I'm doing this on the screen, we would have, just select this again, we would have the F with the curl at the bottom. But again, children in FS find that really difficult, and they find this type of K really difficult as well. So we wouldn't teach that in FS, but that's something we would develop further up the school. So from year 1. And then in sort of at the end of year 1, if they're ready, or in year 2, they would begin to learn to join their handwriting. So just to kind of let you know, at the end of FS2, this is where we expect children to be in the different areas that relate to reading and writing. You might wonder why here it says physical development, but when children are writing at that young age, it is about their physical development and about the muscles and the strength and the way that they're moving their hands and things to enable them to write. So you'll see that it says they show good control with small movements. So that's what we want to see. And this is at the end of FS2. They handle tools and equipment effectively, including pencils for writing. And that can include colouring in and things as well. We want them to have that dexterity and that control over mark making tools as well. And then I'm just going to skip down to writing and I'll come back to reading. So the early learning goal for writing is that children use their phonic knowledge to write words in ways that match their spoken sounds. They might also write irregular common words, so those are your Reggie read words. And then they can write simple sentences which can be read by themselves and others. So that might be a sentence like, the big dog is wet, or I went to the shop. But it might be that some of those words are not quite spelt correctly, but that you can see that they've used their phonics to have a really, really good try at it. So even if they had, I'm trying to think of a word. See, even if they were trying to spell the word saw, if they spelt it S-A-W, let me just write that so you've got a visual. So if they were writing something like, I saw a movie or something, we know that saw should be spelt like this, but children in FS might write that like this because they're hearing that O sound in the middle. But again, that we would say that's phonetically plausible, that spelling. So it doesn't matter if they're spelling some words like that, it's shown that they're using their phonics to have a go. Reading, what we would expect by the end of FS2 is that children were reading and understanding simple sentences. Again, what I mean by that is sentences like, the dog is wet and that kind of thing. So just very, very simplistic sentences. On the FS Padlets, sorry, I'm trying to get rid of the drawing, but it's not letting me. There we go. On the FS Padlets, you'll find a document called Development Matters. You can even just Google this. So this is the very last thing that I'm going to show you. If I go on to Google, I'll just open a new tab if I can get rid of this. 1 second. So if I Google Development Matters in the early years foundation stage, this document will come up, and this will be really useful. I know that the parent at the beginning told me that you've got a child coming into FS1. So this tells you all the areas of the curriculum. And then you can look at all of the different areas of the curriculum. So this is personal, social and emotional development. It goes right through. Here we've got communication and language, we've got listening and attention, we've got understanding, we've got speaking, and it goes right through reading, writing and everything else, but it'll tell you from birth to 11 months what babies would typically be doing round about that age to do with physical development. And you wouldn't have to have a panic if your baby wasn't doing this. It's just giving you a rough guide to the types of things that you would expect within this area, okay? And then it goes right through to around about 22 to 36 months, which is where children are coming into FS1 department. 30 to 50, this is while they're in FS1, 40 to 60, this is while they're in FS2, and then it tells you what the early learning goal is at the bottom here. So it tells you this early learning goal, that's everything that we are aiming for in the whole of FS, okay? And we get some children working beyond this stage as well, but all of these behaviours that you can see coming up right from when the child is, 0, right from when they're born, all the things that we would be expecting children to be doing, but this is the end goal at the end of FS2. And you'll notice for each curriculum area, so I just scroll down because I know that parents always want to see maths and English. So if I scroll down to numbers, some of the things you would be expecting children to notice right from a very early age changes in number of objects. Are they shocked when you suddenly, you know, take one of their carrots away or whatever it may be? And then right up to 40 to 16 months with number, and then this would be the early learning goal. So that's the end game. That's what we want at the end of FS2. So that document's very useful for you, particularly if you've got, even if you've got young babies as well. So I'm just going to stop sharing just now, and I'm also going to stop recording, and I'm just going to check if anyone's got any